Pleased to introduce our second speaker. Many of you already know Katharine Smyth, who is a past president of the OHA. Kathy has been growing vegetables since she was a little girl. Planting seeds and potatoes with her mother was a fun way for her to learn about gardening. After she was married, Kathy and Doug planted a garden even at their rented homes. They learned early on that herbs and vegetables can be planted in small spaces. And now Kathy will share some of her knowledge with us.
Thank you, Sandra, for that nice introduction. I'm glad that all of you have decided to join us tonight for the Ontario Horticultural Association's Earth Day presentation. And I hope you will gain some information that you didn't know before tonight. Growing your own garden isn't a new idea. It was a critical way for ancient people to have access to reliable, nutritious foods. Many of our ancestors only had the food that was grown in their gardens. Necessity of vegetable gardens has varied through time. Gardening has gained popularity recently, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. People spent more time at home and turned to their gardens for a connection to nature, stress relief, and food provisions. I have planted vegetable gardens for a long time and helped my mom plant them and then dig them out. Having children help plant peas, corn, squash, and potatoes and watch them grow will give them a new appreciation for vegetables, and they may even eat them, especially peas, right from the garden. Next slide, Kelly, please. Things that you do need to know before you start growing. What growing zone am I in? Where am I going to put those and grow those vegetables? What properties does my soil have? Will I have to amend them? What vegetables and herbs do I want to grow? There are so many on the market that we can't grow them all, but we do like certain ones. Am I buying seeds or am I buying seedlings? And when is the best time to grow or plant? When is the best time to harvest? Let's find out what our zone is. Next slide. Our zones. Here's a zone map that you can find in the gardening book that the OHA is selling. And as you can see, I'm down in zone 7AB, down in the banana belt of Canada, as we call it. We need to know our first and last frost dates. And for me, that is April the 27th for spring frost date. And the fall frost date is October the 19th. So as you can see, the farther south you go, the longer the growing season. And the frost dates are those considered to be a light frost, temperatures between -1 to 0 degrees centigrade, where tender plants can be killed. Another fact which is helpful is the number of growing days. And for me, that is 174 days. And we'll talk more about that later on. And if you want to find your zone, you can go on this map that is in the gardening journal that is sold by the OHA, or you can go on and just Google growing zones, and there'll be all kinds of them coming up. Next slide, please. Soil. There is so much to know about soils, and there's an article in the journal again to understand soil types. But my mom had the best soil. She had a sandy clay loam, and she could grow anything. She had the best green thumb. We would go to different gardens, and she'd see a plant that she didn't have in her own garden, and she'd take a snip, and she'd she'd wet a Kleenex somehow. She'd find water, and then she'd bring it home, and next year she had it in her garden growing. And that's how she worked with vegetables too. Anything that she planted in the garden that was to be eaten grew like beautiful. And I wish I had that sandy clay loam where I live, but I am in that clay, heavy clay. So you need to know what to put in your pots or in your raised beds. And a good potting mix is what you need for vegetables. And I myself, I take the vegetable and herb potting mix that you can get pro mix at the garden centers, and I mix in some of the compost from my compost pile. And I also mix in a little bit of the dirt from my own garden. And so the dirt from my own garden has some microorganisms in it that help the growth of the plants. And make sure that when you're done mixing up all that, that the earth and the soil is crumbly, then you know that there's oxygen present in it. And if planting in raised beds or in a ground bed, take that potting mix and mix it in with some compost. I usually use the 2 parts potting mix and 1 part compost. But in the fall, after I've harvested all the vegetables, I put a bag of good old sheep manure all over where I plan to plant my vegetables next year. And that's on the raised beds. Like if it's in the containers, I don't do that. But in the raised beds or in the ground level beds, I have a little strip of ground level beds, and I pour the bag of sheep manure all over top, and I don't mix it in. I just let it sit, and it sort of decays over the winter and goes into the soil. Next slide, Kelly, please. And as I've mentioned, here's that Garden Ontario Vegetable Garden Journal, and there's articles in there about soil. There's articles that I will touch on a little bit in my talk, but you can, if you haven't ordered one yet, you can always order one through the GardenOntario.org website and go to supplies, and you can order them right off supplies. There's a lot of pertinent information in that journal. Next slide, please. Seed packages. There's all kinds of seed packages out there, but this little package has the most important information that you need to know. Growing vegetables and herbs, you need at least 6 hours of sunshine. And an easy way to find that out is just to around the 1st of May, start looking at where you want to plant your containers, or where you want to plant your ground level, or where you decide to maybe have a raised bed that it gets 6 hours of sun. So start looking in May, early May, of where the sun is and how long it's there. And what I did is that I started about, 8 o'clock when I usually get up, and find out where the sun is. And then I watched it every hour to see where it was. And in my raised beds, I know that I get at least 6 hours of sun. And that is what the minimum amount of sun is needed. On this little package and the packages that I've shown you, it also tells you the number of growing days. It tells you how tall the plant will be, how deep to plant the seeds, and seed spacing, plant spacing once the seeds have germinated, and then row spacing. If it is container friendly, and how many plants per container, and when to plant outdoors or to start the seeds indoors. Everything you need to know is on this little packet. And their seeds are available from the Ontario Seed Company, Mackenzie Seeds, Vasey Seeds, and you'll see them all over in the nurseries, in the grocery stores, in Canadian Tire. They're all over. When buying seeds, you have a choice of hybrid or heirloom seeds. Heirloom seeds are generally preferred in organic gardening as they are not genetically modified and are open pollinated, so they grow true to type. If you save your own seeds from your plants, you can use them to grow new ones, but those new ones will have the same characteristics as your parent plant. Heirloom seeds support self-sufficiency and biodiversity. Hybrid seeds are commercially cultivated by pollinating 2 specific varieties and are often bred for disease resistance and high crop yields. And then there's Seedy Saturdays that are put together by hort societies all over the province. and they are a very good way to go and buy seeds. And you also listen to excellent speakers who have knowledge about seeds, and you learn a lot from those speakers. Next slide, please, Carol. What can I plant my seeds in? I've shown you here a few different methods. So before you start, you decide where you're going to plant your seeds if you have to plant them indoors. And I have found that these little plastic containers of strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, they're excellent because they have a lid and they also have holes in the bottom. So all you have to do is put some good potting soil for seed starting. Now I'm going to really say that you need to have seed starting soil because it's nice and light and it's made specifically for seed starting. And the bags at the nurseries actually state this on the bag. You'll see seed starting right on the bag. And make sure everything is sterilized. Over the years, I've learned that if I don't look at my potting soil, no matter what kind of potting soil, outside or inside, I check to see that it's sterilized, because sometimes you will get all kinds of weeds and all kinds of other things in that soil that isn't sterilized. And when you do get seed starting soil, you are giving the seeds optimum growing opportunities. Now, Sandra Remillard at our last meeting of the Horticultural Society told us about the snail roll. And for some of you, you may want to try this. You can use bubble wrap, foam packing, cloth, thick plastic, landscape fabric, etc. About 8 inches wide by 24 inches long. You lay it down on your table or on the floor or wherever you've got room for something that's about that long, and spread a layer of moistened seed starting mix about a ½ inch thick on whatever you decided to use. You roll it up like a snail into a snail shape, like a jelly roll, and then you poke the seeds everywhere along that, because it'll be high in the middle and then it'll go lower down, so you've got all that to put seeds in. And this method can save you space, and it was quite ingenious, whoever came up with that. And if Sandra, if you did, thank you, congratulations. You can place seeds in any container, as I said, the plastic ones. Lee Valley shows you a windowsill seed starter. So it is just wide enough to put on a windowsill. It comes with the cover. You don't have to worry about water going, because the bottom reservoir in that middle picture is for the water. And then you have the fiber pots that can be planted directly in the ground, and the container will automatically decompose over the year. So, but make sure you label your containers with the type of seeds that you have put in there. One year I decided I was just going to plant some seeds, and I went through and planted a whole bunch. I had a bunch of fiber pots, and then I didn't label them. But over the years, I've learned that a tomato plant with a couple of leaves looks like so-and-so, and radishes look like so-and-so. So I didn't end up too bad, but if you label them, then you'll understand, and you'll know for sure. And when you plant those seeds, you have to remember that the soil needs to be constantly warm and moist. Now, some people put them on the refrigerator. My refrigerator top is only about 1 inch underneath of the cupboard, so I can't put it there. So I have a warming mat that I use to keep things warm. And you've got to make sure that it's consistently moist as well. And you keep the cover on until you have about 2 sets of leaves or 3 sets of leaves. After your seeds have sprouted, then you remove the cover. The baby plants now require lots of air and light to photosynthesize. So once the seedling has at least 2 sets of leaves or a few more, place it in a sunny window or under a grow light. We just don't get enough sun. Even in my area, we don't get enough sun. I put them on the south-facing window, but there are days where it's cloudy and they don't get enough sun. But another thing to make sure you have is a small fan. One of those little oscillating fans that you can plug in and place it on as low as you can and let it blow over the seedlings. And this starts the seedlings to have a good, strong, sturdy plant that will survive outside, because where I am, it can be pretty windy. And if they don't get a good, strong stock, then sometimes you don't have too many that survive. And when watering, don't splash water on them from overhead, as this can damage them and spread disease. A small watering can with a long, thin spout is the best way to use to water the seedlings. And you know, this finger, it's the best thing to stick in the soil to see if it needs moisture. Don't let them dry out. If you let the seedlings dry out, you might as well start all over again. Hardening off the seedlings is a process, so you can plant them outside. So once you have your seedlings at a good height, you place them in a sheltered, shady spot for a few hours, and then over a week, gradually move them to a sunny spot and increase their time spent outdoors. And usually I do this over 2 weeks so that they really get acclimatized. And watch that frost date too, so you're not putting them out and leaving them out in the frosty air. When the weather is perfect, they can be planted outdoors in their final container and spot. And usually they say at least 60 degrees constantly, with not the temperature going, well, see, I live too close to Detroit and I still work with Fahrenheit. I'm sorry. You have to keep them in a warm, like plant them outside when it's nice and warm, when it stays warm for a good long time. It's great fun to plant seeds with your grandchildren in a see-through plastic cup, and with a few small holes cut in the bottom. And then they can plant the seed in there, watch the seed. You can put just plastic wrap over top with holes in it as well, so that the moisture in that stays in until the seedlings start going. But the children see the roots grow as well as the stem and the leaves grow. So then you have an opportunity to explain how things grow. Next slide, Kelly, please. Now, these are 2 raised beds, because the only place where I have 6 hours of sun are in front of my what used to be a garage that is my husband's woodworking shop. And so he kindly built me these 2 raised beds. And they are in an area where it gets 6 hours of sun a day. And in the afternoon, there's no sun. So when you plant lettuce or things like that, that don't like the hot sun, it works out wonderfully. If you look closely back behind, you'll see that there is 2 little screens that he puts back up at the back, and that's where my tomatoes or my cucumbers or my peas can climb up, and they attach themselves to that screening that's behind. Excuse me. So make sure you check for light before you decide about where you're going to plant your plants. Next slide, Kelly, please. So if you don't have raised beds and you want to find out where you can plant something, there is different areas where you can plant and where that 6 hours is. So here there's a 14-inch pot. There is ground level garden. There are green pots, which are what I plant my potatoes in, and my tomatoes as well. And then there's these little herb garden pots that you can plant them outside on your garden or on your deck or wherever, and then bring them into the house in the winter time. Lettuces and other leafy vegetables do like shade in the afternoon, so that's usually when it's the hottest part of the day. So if you do have an area where you can have 6 hours of sun in the morning to early afternoon and then have shade, that'll work out fine too. Next slide, Kelly, please. What is the earliest we can plant? So let's look at those seed packets. Peas and radishes are cool weather crops and can be planted as soon as the soil is ready, which is right now. For me, it's around April the 15th. I can plant peas and radishes, lettuces and spinach, and then you've got a salad ready to go. And on those seed packets, it will tell you how long before you can harvest and how many days, which is usually maturity. So it matures in 70 days or 60 days or whatever. So some heat-seeking crops such as tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and more can be planted after the harvest of the early crops. And I've done that with the peas and radishes and spinach. By the time the ground warms right up, then you're ready to plant all your heat-seeking ones. Remember to plant the tall vegetables at the back or the north side so that the shorter vegetables are not shaded. You can also start tomato, pepper, herb seeds indoors at this time, and a lot of people already have started them. Because I was coming to Ottawa for a couple of weeks, I didn't get mine started because I thought, who's going to water them? I'll be having dead plants when I get home. So I didn't start them, but I will as soon as I get home. Look at your seed packets. Peas, Lincoln Homesteader, can be planted as soon as the soil can be worked, which is usually pretty cool weather. Germination takes place in 5 to 10 days. So you don't have to wait for the heat when you plant peas. I like to plant peas in rows at the back of my raised bed so they can grow up on that screening. And they can grow 75 centimeters in height. So I gently have to tie the vines to the screening. Look at the seed packet for spacing and plant successive sowings until the 1st of June. And then you'll have plenty of peas to have in your meals or to have your husband go along and eat them right off the vine. Next page, please, Kelly. Now, here's an example of square foot plantings. And these are also on page 32 and 33 of the Garden Journal. There are layouts for planting square foot gardens, and you can make up your own square foot gardening for your raised beds. And I've done this in my raised beds. Mine aren't as wide as that. My raised beds are only 2 feet wide, but each one of these are, 1 foot by 1 foot square. And companion planting has been used in this layout to help keep certain insects away or to encourage certain helpful insects. Next slide, please. Now, this is my son's deck, which he used to grow tomatoes. He had 9 nylon cords attached to the wooden pieces at the top and at the bottom, as you see in the second slide, or second picture. He also had 3 pots at one end and 2 more pots in the front. The tomatoes receive morning sun and evening sun, but shade in the hottest part of the day. As you can see, he had a large crop of tomatoes, which he had made quite a few jars of salsa from. So this is on a deck in downtown Ottawa, well, in a suburb of Ottawa, I should say. And his deck is only about 13 feet wide. So you can see, you can do it. When I plant my tomato plants, I mix about a 1/4 cup of Epsom salts in the hole with the dirt that I've put there to plant my tomatoes. And what does Epsom salts do for tomatoes? Epsom salts adds micronutrients, magnesium and sulfur to the soil. It promotes chlorophyll for healthy green foliage and helps the tomato plant take up nitrogen and phosphorus. You can buy small bags at the drugstores, but that can get costly. I buy a 20 kilogram bag at a local feed store where farmers get their feed for their animals, which used to be peavy, and peavy is now gone. So I hope that there are some of the other stores like Home Hardware or Canadian Tire that will order it in for me, and I'll have my 20 kilos a bag. Because I also spread it first thing in the spring on all my garden. I just take a pail and I just throw it into my garden, and it really helps my flowers grow nice. Next slide, please, Kelly. Companion planting. Now, some believe in this and some don't. For example, I plant my pea seeds every spring, and I plant my seeds of lettuce, spinach, and radishes right with my peas. Because they are all cool weather vegetables, they all like each other. I don't plant garlic or onions or leeks or chives in the same bed because they don't like the first bunch of vegetables. I plant my garlic in the fall, which most gardeners will recommend. I plant basil or curly parsley or carrots or marigolds close by, but I don't plant my cucumbers, cilantro, or potatoes in the same area. Tomatoes like marigolds and nasturtium, and this helps with the pests. You don't get the tomato worm if you plant these beside your tomatoes. I usually plant one tomato plant per 10 to 12 inch pot, and I plant basil or parsley or thyme right in the pot with them or right beside that pot. Next slide, Kelly, please. And potatoes. This is a potato bag. This is a bag that you can buy at Vasey's or you can buy at Lee Valley. And this is what I plant my potatoes in. They're 15 inches high with drainage holes, and they have a little opening on the side where you can go in and get those baby potatoes that we so like to barbecue or roast. I put in a 4-inch layer of potting soil, again, that ProMix vegetable and herb soil, and plant with seed potatoes that are bought from any of the seed companies, and sometimes are found in Canadian Tire or Home Hardware. And we were in Canadian Tire here in Ottawa, and they had a whole row of seed potatoes. So you can go and Google potatoes and figure out which ones you think are going to be the best. I like the red potatoes because they overwinter really nice, but I like the yellow Yukon Gold potatoes because they're a nice tasting potato to have mashed potatoes. And having married a farmer's boy, potatoes and meat are basics for a meal. So I have that 4-inch layer of potting mix. I plant the seed potatoes. Now, if you buy seed potatoes and you find out there's no sprouts on them, just stick the bag in some place where it's dark. Look at it about a week later and they should start sprouting. If not, then keep it for a few more days until they start showing a sprout. Now, if you get some big potatoes and there's 4 or 5 sprouts on there, cut so that you have a piece with 1 sprout on it. And make sure that when you plant that, the potato, the sprout is up and the rest of the potato is down in the soil. So I usually plant in a 15-gallon bag like that one. I usually plant 4 sprouted potatoes with the sprouts facing up. And once that plant starts to grow, I cover those potatoes with soil. And once they start to grow and I see 2 leaves and I see 4 leaves, and maybe when they get about 6 inches high, I cover them out with soil again, up to the 2 leaves again. And I keep doing that until I have that bag full. And sometimes you're putting, when potatoes are growing well and they're getting the moisture and they're getting the sun, about every 2-3 days, you can be upping that soil again. And those potatoes just keep growing. And you get to the top of that potato bag and you can see leaves, then you stop. But when you see the blossom on those potatoes, then you can start opening that little patch there at the bottom and start feeling for little potatoes, and very gently feel for little potatoes, and don't try to disturb the rest of the plant. If you want to keep potatoes for the whole winter, let that plant keep growing let it completely die down, and then very gently take a fork to the edge of that bag and lift out the dead plant, and then harvest your potatoes. And you may have to dump out all that soil on a piece of tarp or whatever to get all the potatoes. I thought I've cleaned out all those bags, and next spring, or like this spring, last year and the year before and the year before that, I had potatoes growing in my compost pile. So it's best to double check. And then when you harvest them in the fall, don't wash them. Just brush off the dirt. If you wash them, they won't keep as long. So I like to put them in onion bags that I have bought during the fall and winter. They're a mesh bag. I like to put them in that and just hang them in my cold room down in the basement. And then you've got potatoes. Now, because you have grown seed potatoes, you might have seed or those potatoes in the spring start to sprout. You can plant those potatoes again and not have to go buy any. I've got a bunch of little ones, red potatoes, that are now sprouted, which I am going to plant in my potato bags this spring. Now, Kelly told us a story of a coworker who had grown potatoes and had asked Kelly what she did wrong because she didn't have any potatoes. And Kelly said, "What do you mean you didn't have any potatoes?" Well, she said they all died. And Kelly said, "Well, did you dig them up?" And she said, "Was I supposed to dig them up?" And so if you're never grown potatoes before, the potatoes grow in the ground and they'll fill that bag up. You will find a lot of potatoes. So if the plant dies, don't worry about it. That's what it's supposed to do. Next slide, please, Kelly. So I've talked about planting containers, but if you have ground level that you want to plant some zucchini in, you know, winter can be hard and plants don't all survive. And sometimes when I see a space where I planted a perennial or an annual or there's nothing there, it's a good place to put a zucchini squash or a butternut squash seeds. And you will have, if you get zucchini squash in that area and it gets lots of sun, then one plant will give you enough zucchini for a family. So make sure that it's a plant, when you plant it, that you plant 3 seeds and look for the healthiest one. And then make sure there's at least 3 feet away from all the other plants for that zucchini. And you will have lots of zucchini. In the past, I've also bought seed strips. Now planting, if you've planted carrots or red beets or radishes, you know how small the seed's in. So I have bought seed strips, but the dirt that I had planted in my raised beds wasn't, I had carrots. They were about this big, and I keep amending that soil. So I hope after 3 years now that when I plant the carrots, that my soil is nice and viable and has lots of oxygen in it, and that I'll get some carrots. So because carrots and red beets need loose soil, and that potting mix is also a good one to put in there. Pests, you will find that there are different pests for different vegetables, but if you plant some flowers or companion planting with it, then you'll cut down on the pests. Last year, the only pests I had was I had dill, and I had it covered with swallowtail caterpillars. The year before, I didn't have curly parsley. I only had the plain Italian parsley. And swallowtails don't like the plain parsley. They like the curly parsley. So last year I had all kinds. Now at one point I counted 18 caterpillars on my dill and curly parsley. And I hope some of them survived, but I think the birds might have got them all. So I'm hoping I'll see swallowtails again this year too. And beets are something that you can put in salad. You'll see a picture here, plantings by seed tape right across on the top of that is the beets, and you can cut those leaves and put them in your salad and they taste delicious. And beets can be frozen. They can be used in pickled beets. They can be used in soups. I even, being here in Ottawa, my grandson and I made beet bread, which is just like zucchini bread, but it's using one red beet that is shredded raw, and it tasted wonderful. So beets are the new good vegetable that everybody's talking about, beet juice and beets this and beets that. So have a try with some beets. My mother-in-law's pickled beet recipe is in the journal, and it's at the end of this program as well. I have not talked about fertilizers as yet. The vegetable and herb potting soil has a slow release fertilizer incorporated in it, so it will help with the vegetables. But vegetables are heavy feeders, so moisture needs to be consistent to release that fertilizer, especially tomatoes. Tomatoes need to have consistent water to stop that blossom end rot, which is the far right-hand picture there that shows all those black spots in there. So having the Epsom salts and having consistent water should not give you any of that blossom end rot. A well-balanced fertilizer, especially for tomatoes, is what I use during this season. Because they are heavy feeders and you want to have a lot of tomatoes, you need to feed. And a water-soluble fertilizer is better to use during the growing season because you're going to water the tomatoes anyways, so you might as well have a water-soluble fertilizer. Crushed up eggshells, I sprinkled around my tomatoes as well because that provides calcium for the tomatoes. And always water your plants at the roots. Again, as I mentioned earlier, watering from the top can spread diseases and can harm the plant. Harvesting and preserving is another article that's in the journal, and harvest vegetables as soon as possible as they reach the size that you want them. Lettuce and spinach are fast growers and need to be harvested almost daily. Peas are usually eaten right off the vine. As I said, my husband doesn't like green vegetables, but he'll eat the peas right off the vine. And so I hope that you have enjoyed this little talk on my growing vegetables. And if anybody has any questions, please, I'll be glad to answer them.
So Kathy, currently there are no questions in the chat, but
Okay.
I have a question for you about sweet potatoes.
Yes.
Very different than growing regular potatoes. Do you grow those?
No, I don't, but we grow them in our gardens in Tilbury, and people have taken them after we've dug them out, and they say they're wonderful. So the sweet potato vine. Yeah.
Do you do anything different for the sweet potatoes than the regular potatoes?
No, I wouldn't. I would just brush the dirt off, don't wash them, and put them in a bag, and yeah, when you want them, use them.
No, I planted both, just the regular russet potatoes and sweet potatoes, and the russets did fine. The sweet potatoes, nothing.
Oh. Yeah, because plant them in with your flowers and see, and let them just go and see what happens there. Because like I said, we plant them at our raised beds in Tilbury, and I myself and some other people have to cut down the vines because they grow so fast. But it's a heavy feeder. They like the fertilizer.
Okay. T. Brown has a question. I'm not sure if they're phone only. Are you there? If you're on the phone, you have. Oh, okay, perfect, wonderful. Go ahead.
Okay. Sweet potatoes, I grow them. I was in Kirkfield. I've just moved to Bancroft. So you start the sweet potato, you have to do it from a slip. Did you know that? So you have to use your sweet potato. You can buy them from the grocery store. I bought my original ones from a farmer, an organic farmer, years ago. And now I just keep enough for each spring. And I put even a piece of the sweet potato, I put the 3 toothpicks in it, suspend it in the water, and the piece will start to grow shoots. And you take, when the shoot's about 4 or 6 inches high, you break it off right at the body, and you put that shoot in the water. And then it will grow more roots, and that is what you start your sweet potato with. So you just can't plant a sweet potato in the garden. You have to do
Right.
that way. And I've planted them in soil bed, a raised bed, and now I simply do it in big tubs, because when I put it in the garden, in the soil, in a ground level garden, I had a heck of a time trying to find where they grew. So they spread out underground, and then so when you're trying to dig them up, you end up spearing them or breaking them off.
Mm.
So I tried it in the
Right.
raised bed, and it went down too deep. They just went down, right? So you were digging like 2 or 3 feet down to try and find them. So now
Okay.
with the tubs, I just emptied the tub. Now sometimes the tubs, you got to make sure they're not too wet or too dry, but and they are maybe a little malformed because they're in tubs. But heck, it makes it a lot easier to turn the tub up sideways on a top, save the soil for next year, and get the sweet potatoes that way. And I have enough that I'm the only one who eats them, mind you, but I have them all season, right, and still have some in the spring, and I'm still eating them now. And I just keep them in the basement, probably about 65 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And you have to keep them away from onions, of course.
Yes, yes.
All
Don't
right.
put potatoes
Well,
and
thank
onions
you.
together.
Thank you very much. I will try that
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
glass to start off with. I appreciate that. So there's another question. Kelly asks, when can she start her potatoes in the bag? And what is the recipe again for the Epsom salt mix?
The Epsom salts is about a 1/4 cup in each hole of the tomatoes, but mixed in with the soil. And
This is for potatoes.
I don't put Epsom salts in with potatoes, just for the tomatoes.
Okay, and about a 1/2 cup in a hole?
Quarter cup in a hole, yep.
1/4 cup in a hole. And when can she start her potatoes in the bag?
Not until the soil is warm. Like I wouldn't be planting them until after, well, it says our frost date in Kelly is in London, so it's not that far from me. So I wouldn't start planting them until after about the 15th of May. Because they don't take cold weather at all. You have to keep it, they have to be at a nice temperature.
Yeah, ours is the first week of June.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's a big difference.
Another question, this might be for T. Brown. Do you bury the tops of the sweet potatoes like you do the potatoes in the pot as they grow? Kathy, you might know that as well, since you do that in the community
No,
garden.
you don't. You don't.
Oh,
You do not.
Okay, thank you.
And it is a vine, and so
Yes.
the sweet potato vine, try not to let the vine root as it grows. So I just curl mine up on the top of my tubs and make sure they don't they tend to grow themselves back on the soil, and you don't want that. You just want the main root growing.
Okay,
Thank you. Even I learned something new tonight.
So they then, like you said, the sweet potatoes, then if you don't keep putting the soil on top, like you said, they grow down.
Yeah.
Well,
Sounds
like what happens is that the vine will attach itself, like start rooting along the vine rather than growing.
Oh.
Like the sweet potatoes are from the root. You understand? Like, so you don't build them up. You just plant it like you would a tomato plant, say. And then it will, you know, the roots are where they go down and they form a root, a long root where the potatoes are from. But you'll tend to see the vine trying to attach itself and grow along on top. And you don't want to do that.
Okay, that's another great point. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Are there any other questions? Anybody on the phone? You can press 6 to ask a question. Okay. I don't see any more questions.
Okay, I'd like to thank Kathy for the wonderful presentation. I think everybody learned something new. It's interesting hearing about your family and what you've done with the grandkids and how well your son is doing growing his own vegetables. And I know Kelly and I were very interested in the potato bag, so something for us to try, and the seed tapes and all the different things to make our vegetables come in bountiful. So I'm looking forward to that. So thanks very much for all that information.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for having me.